Good afternoon, everyone. I am Kim Delgado, your Northeast Region's Regional Engagement Coordinator. Welcome, and we are going to get started. We have a lot of information to present to you today. So, we're going to get started. We have Dr. Phoebe Pollitt here, who is going to present to you Revisiting a Century of Caring NC Nurse Pioneers. And I'm going to read this disclosure statement to you and then her introduction and open up the floor for her. So, the criteria for successfully completing this activity include participation in the entire activity and completing and submitting the evaluation. The North Carolina Nurses Association is accredited as a provider of nursing continuing professional development by the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Commission on Accreditation. The learning outcome for today is that at the end of the activity, 90% of the learners will have new knowledge and understanding of the history of nursing in North Carolina. To present this information, we have, again, Dr. Phoebe Pollitt. Thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Phoebe Pollitt is a nurse educator and historian of nursing. Dr. Phoebe Pollitt has spent 40 plus years of her career studying and celebrating the accomplishments of nurses, past and present. After receiving her bachelor's degree in nursing from UNC Chapel Hill, Pollitt worked as a home health nurse and as the first school nurse in Watauga County. She went on to earn two master's degrees and holds a PhD in curriculum and instruction from UNC Greensboro. She is the author of over 80 articles, 4 books, and numerous presentations, many of which tell the stories of North Carolina's nursing heroes. In 2019, she retired as an associate professor of nursing at Appalachian State University. She loves her 2 sons, 4 grandchildren, kayaking, sewing, and learning about our brave professional foremothers and fathers who have inspired us to continue the pursuit of quality health care for all. Thank you so much, Dr. Pollitt.
Well, thanks, Dr. Delgado. Everybody call me Phoebe. I'm so pleased you all are attending this continuing education session. I just wanted to say briefly, most of today is going to be watching a movie that we made. North Carolina, as you all probably know and will hear, was the first state in the country to have registration for nurses. So when in the 1990s, when we were coming up, the North Carolina Nursing Association formed in 1902, and we got the registration law in March of 03. So in the 90s, knowing those big events were coming up, we made the license plates that some of you may have seen that say First in Nursing. We had many celebrations, but our big event, we had a big centennial celebration in Raleigh, and we premiered this movie. I'm in it. You'll see that I'm younger, thinner, no gray hair. And it showed on public TV frequently in the first couple of years after we made it. And we're still proud, but I wanted to say we probably finished the movie in about 90, maybe 2000. And in the last 24 years, we've learned a lot more. We've just done a lot more research, and more has come to light, particularly about African-American nurses and Native American nurses. And there are certainly some wonderful African-American nurses like Mary Mills, for instance, included in this movie, but I don't think there are any Native American nurses. So one of my hopes for 2027 is somehow having a sequel that would be more expansive and more inclusive. At any rate, please put questions in the chat, or after the movie, we'll have questions and discussion. I hope you enjoy it. And if any of you all may know that I have a column in the Tar Heel Nurse every time it comes out, just about. And I would love to share that authorship with anybody out there who wants to write about nursing history, people, schools of nursing, events that happened in nursing. It would just be wonderful to have more of you interested and willing to write for our professional community. Thanks. I'll quit. I could talk a long time. I'll be quiet.
Major funding for North Carolina nurses, a century of caring, was provided by Duke University Health System, UNC Hospitals, University Health Systems of Eastern Carolina, and Wake Forest University Baptist Medical Center. Additional funding was provided by the following.
How are you?
Good.
You just come in from recess?
Mm-hmm.
How's your lungs feeling?
Okay.
It's okay? Not too good? You could probably use a little bit of medicine to make your lungs feel a little bit better.
Nursing provides an essential public service. That is a great honor, and there is a tremendous duty to do that well.
Before 1903 in North Carolina and everywhere in the country, anybody could call themselves a nurse and in fact practice nursing.
Nursing arose in this state and in many others through sort of indentured servitude in the hospitals.
They worked 12-hour days, 6.5 days a week, and they learned by doing. There was a clear need for standardization of education, of knowledge, of skill, and from the first Nurse Practice Act to the current one today, the essential cause of the Nurse Practice Act is to protect the public from unsafe nursing care.
In a culture where women were really to be in the background, to get that recognition that the educated nurses were getting with that Practice Act was just pretty incredible in those days.
It's a wonderful place to be, North Carolina, and be a healthcare provider. Other states look at us and they're just in awe of what has happened in our state.
Our first board of nursing, our first critical care unit, one of the first nurse practitioner programs. It was a state that was trying to do better.
It was very important to demonstrate that growth had occurred within the profession and that nurses had the ability, the desire, and the need to control the profession.
There's no way you could do anything except get out of the way and let these women develop what is now one of the great stories of public health.
When the Civil War began in 1861, North Carolina had neither hospitals nor trained nurses. As in other Confederate states, most nursing duty fell to infantrymen, but huge numbers of casualties from both battle and disease shocked many Southern women into volunteering their services as nurses.
At that time, there was still a cultural sense that women, well-bred women, wouldn't be nurses.
They didn't feel that the role for women was with men, certainly not rough and tough military men. The initial response to women joining and helping to relieve soldiers in the Civil War was negative.
For many, Florence Nightingale's Notes on Nursing, which detailed her success nursing British soldiers during the Crimean War a decade earlier, served as their inspiration and only instruction manual.
It was published in 1860, just as the war broke out. Carpet bags were prepared for women going off to war, and invariably they'd have a copy of Notes on Nursing.
Nurses' contributions to the war effort came in many forms. Mrs. Fatima Worth of Fayetteville offered her plantation house as a Confederate hospital and converted 26 acres of land to poppies, which were used to make the painkiller opium.
They saw a need in everything they did. They chose to do on their own. They had to make it, borrow it, create it. They had a wing and a prayer, and they made it happen, and they saved a lot of lives and I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like that before, because they were the first ones, and we stand on their shoulders.
By the end of the war, women had established 15 military hospitals in North Carolina alone and helped create the new career of professional nursing. Jane Wilkes of Charlotte was among those asking why North Carolina should have hospitals only during wartime. Having served in Charlotte's Confederate hospitals, Wilkes worked with St. Peter's Episcopal Church to establish the first civilian hospital in the state.
The neighbors thought that bringing together a bunch of sick people with diseases, would be a very bad thing too. They didn't want to live next door to people with tuberculosis and typhus and God knows what else Jane Wilkes was going to bring into their neighborhood.
Despite neighbors' threats to shoot into the building, St. Peter's Hospital began seeing patients in 1876. By custom and law, St. Peter's would admit only white patients, so Jane Wilkes began raising funds for a hospital for Charlotte's African-American population. In 1891, the Good Samaritan Hospital opened. It was the first privately funded, independent hospital in North Carolina exclusively for the treatment of African Americans.
Blacks couldn't vote, couldn't own property, couldn't have a lot of jobs, segregated schools, and here was this cultured, educated white woman advocating on their behalf. And not just on their behalf, Jane Wilkes really worked with people, more than 4 people. She formed alliances, had meals, went to dinner, had board meetings.
The Charlotte paper described Jane Wilkes's funeral in 1913. Never in the history of the church, and seldom in the history of the city, has there been such a gathering. The rich and the poor, white and black, came together to pay the tribute of appreciation to this great woman. As hospitals sprang up throughout North Carolina in the late 19th century, the need for trained nurses became apparent. The state's first nursing school opened at Rex Hospital in Raleigh in 1894. Mary Lewis Weich, a Vance County native and nursing graduate of Philadelphia General Hospital, started the school shortly after becoming head nurse at Rex.
The hospital of only 23 beds was rather small to have a school of nursing, but there were patients who needed care and young women who wanted to be taught the art of nursing. Mary Lewis Weich.
Watts Hospital School of Nursing opened in Durham in 1895 and is the oldest school of nursing still in operation in the state. Opening in 1896, the St. Agnes School of Nursing in Raleigh was the first professional nursing school for African Americans in North Carolina. Additional schools of nursing for African Americans opened in 1902 at Charlotte's Good Samaritan Hospital and at Lincoln Hospital in Durham.
In the late 1800s, early 1900s, when 2 doctors opened practice in the same town, the first thing they did was buy a hospital and open it, and the second thing they did was start a school of nursing. And the School of Nursing then provided their labor for the hospital.
The nurses would staff the wards, and so it was not unusual to have to leave a lecture because you needed to be back on the wards. Also, the nurses worked nights and weekends, and it was pretty tough.
They were very rigid in terms of rules and regulations. In fact, some individuals, when they would say they were entering nursing school, almost felt like they were entering a nunnery.
They were not academic programs. You know, that requires money. It requires faculty. It requires students that are prepared for those kinds of programs.
And all you had to do was call yourself a nurse and solicit business. You didn't have to have any education, any knowledge, any skill.
In 1897, the newly formed American Nurses Association called for laws establishing professional standards, the regulation of nurse training schools, and the registration of nurses. The ANA was the first women's professional group in the U.S., and its first president was Isabel Hampton Robb of Ohio.
In the absence of educational and professional standards, I am sadly forced to admit that the term trained nurse means anything, everything, and next to nothing. Isabel Hampton Robb.
By 1902, the momentum for nurse registration had led to the formation of several state nurses' associations. Mary Lewis Weich spearheaded the effort to organize North Carolina's nurses.
She knew she had to have an organization of like-minded people, nurses, to go to the General Assembly in order to pass what she considered to be necessary for safe practice in nursing.
Weich sent a postcard to nurses throughout Raleigh, inviting them to an organizational meeting. Not a single nurse showed up. So she mailed another postcard 2 weeks later, announcing a second important meeting of the New Nurses Association. Every nurse in town came, eager to know what they'd missed. Weich confessed her ruse, and this group began enthusiastically planning what in 1902 officially became the North Carolina Nurses Association, with Mary Lewis Weich as its president. In its first year, the NCNA framed a bill to provide for the registration of trained nurses.
She had no vote, and all of the people that she was organizing to assist her had no vote. And they had not a lot of money. So how do you convince a politician to do something when votes and money aren't involved? So it has to be by the conviction of the cause.
On March 3, 1903, North Carolina became the first state in the nation to pass a nurse registration law. The purpose, said Mary Lewis Weich, was to secure for future nurses better education in theory and such skill in practice that the public would have confidence in the registered nurse.
Your license is a pact with the consumer. It shows that you have had appropriate education and training to be able to help them when they most need help.
When you look at what that woman did, in a matter of 2 years, she got a practice act, an association, she established a school at Rex. What a whirlwind. That's just unimaginable.
I think she's truly a remarkable woman, and I think deserves as much respect in North Carolina as Florence Nightingale.
Developing exams and issuing licenses was entrusted to the new Board of Nursing, composed of 3 registered nurses from the Nurses Association and 2 physicians from the Medical Society.
I think it's noteworthy that in that first group of 35 licensed was a African-American nurse, Annie Lowe Rutherford, who had graduated from Freedman's Hospital in Washington, D.C., and went to work in Fayetteville after she was licensed.
Despite its accomplishments, NCNA regulations stated only white nurses shall become members of this association. In 1923, Carrie Early Broadfoot of Fayetteville organized a professional association for African-American graduate nurses. Despite a lack of funds, staff, and office space, the organization grew steadily and held conventions every year, focusing primarily on educational and employment discrimination. Organized nursing was in the forefront of breaking down racial barriers in North Carolina. In 1948, the NCNA voted to open its membership to all RNs in the state, and the Colored Nurses Association voted itself out of existence. In the winter of 1900, a nurse from Philadelphia named Lydia Holman arrived in Mitchell County in the North Carolina mountains to care for a wealthy woman who was very ill with typhoid fever at her vacation home. Mitchell County was dirt poor. It was 30 miles from a railroad, physicians, or supplies of any kind, Holman noted. It had no running water, much less a trained nurse.
She took a look around and saw these basically appalling living conditions. A lot of people with blindness and deafness, orthopedic deformities, illnesses that could be prevented, deaths at an early age. And she said, I have really got to do something about this.
Many families living in the faraway nooks and corners get only such medical attention as the old women who doctor with teas and brews can give them. Frequently, I find them suffering from an overdose of the remedy taken rather than the ailment for which it was given. In many ways, they are 100 years behind the times. Lydia Holman.
Traveling by horseback over bad roads and worse trails, up stream beds and through rivers, she delivered hundreds of babies, performed minor surgery and dentistry, immunized against typhoid, and fought epidemics of tuberculosis, smallpox, and measles. She taught canning, dental hygiene, and kindergarten. Give them half a chance and see what they become, Holman used to say.
Lydia Holman was one of the first in the country to do what we would call settlement nursing, to go to an area, set up shop on her own, no help from doctors, hospitals, community health agencies, and be independent practitioners to increase the health of a population.
The National Organization for Public Health Nursing was established in 1912 with the legendary Lillian Wald of New York's Henry Street Settlement as president and Lydia Holman, a member of its first board of directors. Inspired by Holman's work in Mitchell County, the organization convinced the American Red Cross to establish nursing services for rural areas nationwide.
Public health nurses were the ones who came in when the family had typhoid fever, or measles, or chicken pox, or mumps, or any of the other diseases. So that public health nurses were the first real presence of health care in most homes and families.
The young doctor came to the town of Spruce Pine and wanted more patients. By then, Lydia had been there since 1900. She had birthed them and sometimes their parents and had taken care of their extended family with whatever. Well, the doctor charged her with practicing medicine without a license. So they locked her up for a few hours, and citizens of Mitchell County came down to Spruce Pine to the courthouse and prevailed on the judge to let her go and drop the charges.
Women won the right to vote in 1920. They were entering nursing, teaching, and other professions in record numbers. Yet the death rate of women giving birth in the U.S. remained one of the highest in the Western world, and women in rural areas were especially at risk. Perhaps the most significant impact of public health nurses in North Carolina was their effort to improve the techniques of uneducated or granny midwives, who were for many women the only option for assistance in delivering their babies.
The midwife was nothing but a neighbor, a kind neighbor who joined in and did what she could to help another neighbor. There was nobody else to help the families. We did not have a hospital in Northampton County. We had some private physicians, but you know, they were far apart.
In 1941, Ruth Hay, a national leader in public health nursing education, was appointed to establish the UNC Department of Public Health Nursing at the School of Public Health. Hay was the first female professor appointed to the university's faculty. In 1946, the department instituted a cooperative program with North Carolina Central in Durham, whose African American students were denied admission to UNC. Under the leadership of Lincoln School of Nursing graduate Mary Mills, RNs could earn a public health certificate after 1 year of study at NC Central.
I came to Central and did that program that summer for them, and students came from all over the country.
For her to make public health nursing available to primarily African Americans was, I think, a very, very outstanding contribution on her part.
In the 1950s, under Chairman Helen Miller, NC Central developed a bachelor's degree program in public health nursing. At the time, North Carolina was the only state in the South offering public health nursing for African American RNs. Both Helen Miller and Mary Mills would later receive the ANA's prestigious Mary Mahoney Award, which was named for the first professionally trained African American nurse in America.
Girls of the Army Nurses Corps, American women going to war fronts around the globe with the men.
During World War II, demand for nurses became acute, both in the military and at home. The U.S. Cadet Nurse Corps, a federally funded training program, was created in 1943. By 1945, over 1,000 nurses from North Carolina were serving in the armed forces. The critical nursing shortage continued after the war. To address this need, the North Carolina Nursing Practice Act was amended to include regulations for licensed practical nurses, or LPNs, who work under the supervision of physicians or registered nurses to provide hands-on care for patients. Miriam Daughtry led the curriculum development for practical nurse education for the Board of Nursing. By 1951, there were 9 schools of practical nursing in the state.
LPNs are extremely valuable in terms of providing care to clients who need nursing care, but they are not so critically ill and unstable that they're changing their status minute by minute, hour by hour. LPNs are well prepared to take care of the basic nursing needs of the public.
The creation of the LPN role also enabled a lot of women who were not financially able or whose family situations did not allow them to enter into a long-term commitment such as that, to again fulfill the dream of being a nurse.
During World War II, North Carolina had earned the dubious distinction of leading the nation in the rate of rejection of its draftees for medical reasons.
It was both not only a shock, but a great embarrassment to really thoughtful people. How in the world could we abandon a generation this way?
In response, a commission appointed by Governor J. Melville Broughton recommended creating what would become the UNC Division of Health Affairs by expanding the medical school from 2 years to 4, building a teaching hospital, and establishing schools of nursing and dentistry to join those of public health and pharmacy.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And by the way, when I say thank you, it's not just a phrase.
The effort to gain support for funding these enormous projects was unlike anything the country had ever seen. Promoted by North Carolina native Kay Kaiser, the most popular big band leader in America at the time, and endorsed strongly by the NCNA, the Good Health Campaign took its message directly to the people.
Even Superman supports the Good Health Plan. He knows what it will do. It's all up to you.
We redirected the whole thinking in the state that health was important, that you aren't going to enjoy life unless you do know what health is.
National and statewide studies in the late 40s documented acute shortages of nurses qualified to be administrators, supervisors, and educators, reinforcing the growing sentiment that professional nurses should be educated in colleges and universities rather than in hospitals.
There was very little new knowledge and information coming into those programs. I mean, people went to a diploma program, they worked in a hospital, and then they taught in that hospital.
As early as 1931, Duke University Hospital had begun a 3-year nursing diploma program. Nursing students could get a baccalaureate degree with 2 additional years at Duke University. Leading the crusade in the late 40s for a baccalaureate school of nursing at Chapel Hill was Elizabeth Scott Carrington, a nurse who was also the sister of North Carolina Governor Carr Scott.
She came out of the Scott tradition in North Carolina. Her brother was governor, another brother senator. That family was the personification of this business of self-giving.
She knew very well the people in the legislature, and she herself was a good, wholesome politician. Also, her husband was a doctor in Burlington and a leader in the State Medical Society.
When her eyes narrowed in a conversation, look out, because all the patient was about to leave. She was going to tell you, it's plain and simple, and blunt away as a mortal can say thing, and remind you to get on with it. Let's get this school built.
What she wanted foremost was a school of nursing that was an independent school of nursing, that was run by a nurse, did not report to either a hospital or a dean of medicine, but was its own freestanding school. And that was her most passionate crusade.
Under the leadership of Dean Elizabeth Kemble, the UNC School of Nursing opened in Chapel Hill in 1950. It was the first in the state and one of only 3 in the South to offer a 4-year baccalaureate degree.
The degree nursing program provides some liberal arts background, some education for living, as well as the kind of scientific education that people need to be able to give good care to the public.
In a university setting, what you're able to do is to focus on not only skills, but on the ability to think critically, to lead, to manage, to pull a team together, and to work effectively in delivering client care.
North Carolina Memorial Hospital was completed in 1952. The next year, it opened the nation's first intensive care unit, requiring advanced preparation for nurses. By 1955, North Carolina also had baccalaureate nursing programs at Duke, Winston-Salem State Teachers College, and North Carolina A&T in Greensboro. These programs emerged during a watershed decade in the advancement of healthcare. Research in the increasingly complicated fields of nursing practice, administration, and education became even more essential, as did the need for master's level education.
The master's program at UNC, when it started in the 50s, prepared nurses to be either teachers or administrators. And so they were meeting the need to prepare faculty for schools of nursing across the state.
Why not have an additional level of preparation for clinical nursing for nurses, and for that to be at the master's level, so that there could be more specialization, there could be a deeper knowledge known of certain symptoms, interventions, and so forth.
In 1957, Duke's School of Nursing revolutionized graduate nursing education by introducing the first clinical master's program in nursing in the country.
Duke led the way, and people began to realize, yes, clinical practice is very important, and we need to be educating people in that direction.
Throughout the 1950s, North Carolina led the South in its commitment to nursing education for African Americans, with baccalaureate programs at 3 historically black universities. Opportunities for African American registered nurses in North Carolina expanded in 1961 when Dean Helen Miller of the NC Central School of Nursing established a program enabling them to return to school to get their baccalaureate degree.
Helen was a fierce advocate for the integration of nursing, not just of African Americans, but of men and other minorities as well. Helen thought that nurses had a strong clinical base and needed some additional education. So she created what I think was a premier national program for non-baccalaureate prepared registered nurses.
What she was attempting to do was to say to any RN, here is an opportunity in a university setting.
She was ahead of her time, and many of us today are doing some of the things that she started with the first program back in the 60s. And so she deserves the credit for that kind of vision.
A 1964 survey found that North Carolina still suffered a severe shortage of nurses with baccalaureate degrees. 2 years later, Eloise Lewis, also known as Patty, became the founding dean of the UNC Greensboro School of Nursing and established its 4-year baccalaureate program.
It was a program that was alive with ideas, and a program that stayed up to date and changing because of her energy and expertise and knowledge. She was a very astute politician. She was a great leader, and she knew how to connect with people.
Lewis served simultaneously as president of the NCNA and chair of the Board of Nursing. She was one of 36 charter fellows of the American Academy of Nursing in 1973 and received the 1976 O. Max Gardner Award, which the UNC system presents each year to the faculty member who has made the greatest contribution to the welfare of the human race. In addition to her academic work and leadership, Eloise Lewis played a major role in developing Hospice of Greensboro.
Hospice is sort of the culmination of her career. First and foremost, Patty was an educator. But after her retirement, and she also had cancer herself, and after that, her understanding of the need for care at end of life became much clearer, and she became much more committed to it.
She had to give back all of herself all the time. And if you want to know about Eloise, how successful she really was, well, just look around you, what you see in North Carolina. That generation of young people are hers, and I admired her greatly.
The same 1964 survey that addressed baccalaureate shortages contained other equally dire conclusions. The state is doomed to a chronic and severe nursing shortage for the next decade, it said. The survey recommended that schools of nursing be established in the state's new system of community colleges, which has grown to become the third largest in the nation. 57 of North Carolina's 58 community colleges now offer 3-semester programs to prepare licensed practical nurses and/or 5-semester associate degree programs to prepare registered nurses.
They're actually coming in saying, I've really wanted to do this all my life. I couldn't do it, but now that the school is here, this is something I can do. And that's been very helpful to them. It's been very helpful to us as a community.
Very little at the chest tubes.
As we look at nursing into the 21st century, we are probably going to see a need to advance LPN education. There have been so many changes in the technology and so many advancements made in the diagnosing and the treatment of folks that I think for the LPN to keep up and to advance, she may have to consider becoming the associate degree nurse.
3 to 10 days.
Hospitals like New Hanover Health Network in Wilmington are providing funding and resources to community colleges, enabling them to hire additional nursing faculty and increase enrollment in associate degree nursing programs.
North Carolina is on the cutting edge in offering career pathways to students. We've taken our LPNs and we've encouraged them in a lot of ways to go back to school for an RN. We've taken our associate degree graduates and said, hey, you're doing a wonderful job. The hospitals have said, let me pay you to go back to school.
Is the waterproof lining sterile or clean?
Schools have tried to facilitate the way in which RNs can earn their baccalaureate degree. We also have in this state an articulation agreement between the community college system and the university system, which makes it much easier for a nurse who gets an associate degree to have the coursework that she's done at the community college recognized by the university system.
Which is the bone in our leg that we use to find.
One of the more controversial issues for nursing is the various routes that a person can become a nurse. You may go and get a 4-year degree in a baccalaureate school, a 2-year degree in a community college, a 3-year diploma in a hospital school, and once you have graduated, everyone takes the same exam.
Doctors don't come out and have 3 or 4 kinds of education. Lawyers don't, other professionals don't, but yet nurses do, and we seem to do a good job of it, but I still think it's time that we address that issue.
The new bill expands the 30-year-old Social Security program to provide hospital care, nursing home care, home nursing service, and outpatient treatment for those over 65. Medicare will become law on July 1st, 1966. And
with the establishment of Medicare and Medicaid, access to health care was greatly expanded. But North Carolina was still America's most rural state. Although all 100 counties had home health care services provided by public health nurses, the state ranked 43rd in the number of physicians per citizen. Recruitment of primary care doctors to underserved areas was especially difficult.
We had a great many nurses in local communities. Many of them had been working with physicians over years that already had the relationship, the local acceptance, the fact that they were going to stay there because those were their homes, that were very positive factors for us.
Let's see if we can slide up under here. Okay? There we go. Go tick-tock, tick-tock.
It was really felt that with just a little additional education, they could really meet most of the primary care needs of most people.
Dr. Lucy Conant, Dean of the UNC School of Nursing, worked with Med School Dean Isaac Taylor and Department of Public Health Nursing Chair Margaret Dolan to develop one of the first nurse practitioner programs in the nation. Margaret Dolan had recognized the primary care problems in North Carolina early on. She was a national figure, the first North Carolinian to be president of the ANA, president of the American Public Health Association, the National Health Council, and the American Journal of Nursing Company.
I remember when she came back from Russia. She had seen barefoot doctors at work without a great deal of education, but really well trusted by their community folks, being able to deliver and good health care and wellness education.
Dr. Glenn Pickard, Julia Watkins, and others at UNC began teaching nurses to provide primary care. Due to the excellent results, Pickard and his colleagues looked to expand this outreach. Prospect Hill, an hour north of Chapel Hill, had a health care crisis typical of many small towns in North Carolina and the nation when its only doctor died.
Prospect Hill is just a crossroads, but people came in from miles to be taken care of by Dr. Warren. When he left, they were bereft. They built a clinic thinking we'll get another doctor. Well, a clinic didn't draw another doctor.
Prospect Hill then became an experiment, a rural community in which there would be 3 nurse practitioners and 1 physician who would come out periodically to see patients and to consult with them. And then it became a very successful experiment, and it still, today, works.
Once the models had been established, they just began to proliferate throughout the state through the leadership of individuals such as Cindy Friend and Audrey Booth and Glenn Pickard. The people who were involved in all of the nurse practitioner educational programs came together to be able to develop a common curriculum, common standards for measuring clinical competence.
In 1975, North Carolina set forth some, what I believe is hallmark legislation, in that we approved in the state nurses to be able to perform medical acts and to prescribe medications.
Okay, I'm going to give you this medicine. You keep on taking those drops. Let me just write this up for you. Okay, can you stick your tongue out at me like this?
By 1976, there were 90 nurse practitioners in North Carolina. Today, approximately 2,000 practice in the state.
Okay, and how's that feel? Okay.
Nurse practitioners are just one type of what are known as advanced practice registered nurses. Others include nurse anesthetists, clinical nurse specialists, and certified nurse midwives.
That's not too unusual at this point in time.
Completion of an advanced formal education program is required for recognition to practice in any of these categories.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, how are you doing?
Good. I'm Pam Reese. I'm a nurse midwife, and I'll be seeing you today.
Certified nurse midwives received recognition to practice in North Carolina in 1983. Throughout the 80s, the number of those practicing hovered around 40. In 1991, East Carolina University opened the first nurse midwifery educational program in the state, and nearly 200 certified nurse midwives were practicing within a decade.
we can't educate and keep enough doctors in this state to handle the need out there. And these advanced practice nurses are extremely well qualified to do what they do, and it just makes the system work.
Is that painful?
We estimate that a family nurse practitioner routinely performs approximately 90% of the types of exams and diagnoses and treatments that a family practice physician performs.
I think if I was 80 or 85 and I was involved with a nurse practitioner, had a nurse practitioner providing care to me, I'd look at that person, he or she, and I think I would say I had something to do with you, with your role, with what you're doing today, and I'd feel very proud of that.
Contaminant source control means that that particular room should have its own dedicated ventilation.
Another innovation in the effort to attract health personnel to underserved communities was launched in 1970, when a Carnegie Commission report recommended a nationwide system of area health education centers, or AHECs, which would be affiliated with university health science centers and focus on primary care training.
Area Health Education Centers was the very first major recommendation of the Carnegie Commission in all of its history. Medical science was moving so swiftly. You just didn't have at the local level the kind and quality of understanding that had to be, let alone the multiplicity of it that was needed. So this was an attempt to bridge that gap.
The AHEC program was funded by Congress in the Comprehensive Health Manpower Training Act of 1971. North Carolina's AHEC program, one of the nation's first, began the next year.
We could take our health science students and rotate them through parts of the state where they would get real-life experiences and hopefully have such wonderful clinical experiences that they would then stay there and practice. And from 1972, from those 3 AHECs, we then grew to the 9 regional health education centers who are part of a coordinated statewide system.
AHEC offers nurses throughout North Carolina access to RN to BSN and Masters in Nursing outreach programs, as well as a wide variety of continuing education opportunities through the state's nursing schools.
AHEC nurses are really part of the cutting edge of nursing and health care in North Carolina. It brings high quality, affordable, accessible programs and services at the community level based on the needs that are articulated by the health professionals living in that community.
I don't know of anything that has singularly the impact that program has had among all the so-called outreach programs. This one has augured quite well for our country. I'm very pleased to have been a part of that.
Now in its 100th year, the North Carolina Nurses Association continues to represent the interests of all registered nurses and is the official spokesperson for the profession in North Carolina.
The NCNA is one clear voice that we have in North Carolina. They've been very effective in helping us get legislative issues passed and very effective in keeping us informed in North Carolina about what's going on.
We do have, as mentioned, the North Carolina Nurse Workforce Planning Model, which is off and running.
One of the NCNA's crowning achievements came in 1991, when in response to a severe nursing shortage, it spearheaded the creation of the North Carolina Center for Nursing, the first state-funded agency in the nation dedicated to assuring adequate nursing resources for its citizens.
We needed one entity that had that as its primary goal and objective that would work collaboratively with the existing resources of the Professional Association, NCNA, the Board of Nursing, and the AHECs.
The center coming into being is really a reflection of the extraordinary ways that nursing leaders in North Carolina work together. I think leaders here in nursing partner more than any place I have ever been or seen.
It provides really the research that backs up a lot of the issues that we are bringing to the General Assembly. They are great at providing manpower statistics and salary data and that sort of thing. And they work in conjunction with the Board of Nursing, too, to gather the data. The board gathers it and the center interprets it. So it is a benefit to all of us.
It gives us good public policy on how to solve the problems that we have when we have nursing shortages.
We know from our studies of vacancy rates in hospitals, for instance, that there's a real strong relationship between low vacancy rates and having nurses represented on serious policy-making committees of the hospital. I think that speaks volumes.
The Magnet Recognition Program for Excellence in Nursing Service, which is sponsored by the American Nurses Association, gives national recognition to healthcare organizations that demonstrate sustained excellence in nursing care. There is an increasing number of Magnet hospitals in North Carolina, including North Carolina Baptist in Winston-Salem, High Point Regional, and Catawba Valley Medical Center in Hickory.
They include the nurses in the discussion. There's career ladders for nurses. There's just a real sense of commitment to the fact that nurses are who deliver the care in the hospital.
If I am in a hospital, the only reason I have to stay overnight is that I need nursing care.
Mrs. Swearing, good morning.
Same with a nursing home. The reason I would stay there is that I need nursing care. Physicians are not there. They come periodically, but the nurse is there around the clock.
North Carolina has an increasing number of registered nurses, but they're not all going to hospitals as we used to all do. You started your practice in a hospital setting for the most part.
We have a shortage because nurses work in many more situations now, and many of them are more attractive to them than night duty in the general hospital in their local hometown.
The difficulty with this current nursing shortage is that we have a graying of nursing just as we have a graying of the population. And so many of us are getting older. Faculty in schools of nursing are getting older. And young people, particularly the women who generally chose nursing in the past, have many more career options.
My mother used to tell me that there are only 4 professions open to women: bookkeeper, teacher, nurse, or none.
Persons that might have come into nursing are in medicine, dentistry, law, all kinds of corporate careers.
This nursing shortage is not going to go away, unlike many of the previous ones. And so we recognize that there will be fewer people to perform more activities. In other words, more will be put on the shoulders of the nurse. The nurse will be asked to accept more responsibility and accountability. The real tough issue is how much can one safely accept?
I would like to call this a regular meeting of the North Carolina Board of Nursing to order.
Ultimately responsible for ensuring safe, effective nursing care for the state's citizens, the Board of Nursing enforces the North Carolina Nursing Practice Act. It regulates nursing practice, approves educational programs, and licenses and disciplines registered nurses and licensed practical nurses.
Regulatory boards are really being forced to relook at how we do discipline. In many situations, the system may be as much involved in creating a setup, so to speak, for errors to occur, as it may be an individual making a mistake. The other thing that we are wanting to do, which is a reframing, I hope, of discipline, is to try to move away from punishment and much more toward remediation.
A major milestone in the self-regulation of nursing was achieved in 1981, when North Carolina became the only state in the nation to allow nurses to elect their Board of Nursing, rather than having its members appointed by the governor. 9 members are RNs, 4 are LPNs, and the governor continues to appoint 2 members representing the public.
The main thing that we had to accomplish was to truly educate not only nurses, but people everywhere about the right of the profession to control its own practice and the need for that control in order for nursing to then grow and expand.
We didn't have money, but we had unity, we had numbers, and we had commitment. And I think that's what won the day.
It's a real tribute to the nursing leaders of the time, but also to the General Assembly, that they were willing to allow nursing to take control of their practice, because I believe that's what it's all about.
Creating a board that was elected and took out that sort of political overlay of who are you and whom have you supported in the past, in order for me to appoint you to a board. We don't have that. I think that makes it a healthier board that can focus very clearly on its public mandate.
One member of the Board of Nursing must be a nurse practitioner, nurse anesthetist, nurse midwife, or clinical nurse specialist.
The North Carolina Nurses Association and Board of Nursing are working together to bring all of nursing, including advanced practice, under the regulation of the board. Currently, nurse practitioners and certified nurse midwives are regulated by joint committees that include physician representatives.
Those new glasses?
No. But reticulocytes are young.
We have a very clearly developed curriculum for advanced practice nurses, all done under nursing education programs. So it would be consistent to bring the practice of that area under the regulation of the board.
We started the Nurse Practice Act at the beginning of the century, and it has served us well, and we've got this board that served us well. We've got a profession where no one ever criticizes them from any side. Why not put them all under that board and let them all function as one group?
There have always been and continue to be women in nursing in North Carolina who push the envelope. And there's nurses today working in AIDS clinics, working in homeless shelters, working in nurse-managed clinics. You know, still that spirit of serving needs and serving the least of these and expanding practice, and it exists and continues and thrives.
Stood her up a little bit and I'm listening to her.
A prime example of pushing the envelope is the Nursing Center for Health Promotion in Charlotte, which 2 UNC Charlotte nursing faculty members founded in 1989 to provide health care to homeless women and children.
The Nursing Center is a nurse-managed facility in which we, the faculty of UNC Charlotte in nursing, attempts to model best practices for our students.
Some people might say more TLC, but there's...
And in doing that, we also provide a community service. We really try to operate on a philosophy that focuses on the whole person in the context of their family and their life situation, and it flows directly from our nursing philosophy.
Every profession has several functions to perform. First and foremost is service to its clients, and nursing has done that very well. It is also responsible for the next generation of practitioners. And a third responsibility involves the next generation of methods that these practitioners will use.
Unless we have researched to tell us what is the best way, we're just repeating the same old training things. The book says to do it this way. This is a different kind of patient, but I don't know another way. I can't visualize. I can't imagine what else might work better. Without research, I'll never know that.
Nursing research has been critical to move nursing forward to really becoming a profession. We have nurses right here in North Carolina that are extremely well funded by the National Institutes of Health.
In 1989, the UNC School of Nursing, under leadership of Dr. Laurel Archer Kopp, established a PhD program in nursing as a badly needed resource in the state for faculty preparation and research. The state's second doctoral program in nursing opened in 2002 under the leadership of Dr. Phyllis Horns at the East Carolina University School of Nursing.
In North Carolina, of course, up until '89, we didn't have any doctoral programs in nursing. And so nursing faculty in order to get themselves prepared at the doctoral level, if they were going to go to school in the state, had to earn their doctoral degrees in some other field.
I think it's very important at this time in our history to have leadership in nursing at the doctoral level that is really steeped in nursing philosophy and the knowledge base that is specific to nursing.
Nursing in North Carolina is a passion, and it is a passion of nurses everywhere across this state for the health of all people and the critical role that nursing plays in accomplishing that vision.
I applaud those nurses who developed the Nurse Practice Act and who developed licensure and the education of the nurses in our state for paying attention to what was important to the citizens of North Carolina and to me as a future nurse practicing in this state.
We do have a rich history, and I think it's that rich history that supports our continuing to be really proactive. We all know North Carolina was first in flight. Well, we were actually first in nursing before we were first in flight.
The greatest challenge for nursing is to really own our own history and our destiny and to assert the uniqueness of the profession and to make it known and to grow that body of knowledge and to do so in the service of humankind so that we can improve human care.
It will grow because the profession itself now has the dignity, has the history, and has the qualification of being what it is, which is simply a first-rate place to give your life.
Major funding for North Carolina nurses, A Century of Caring, was provided by Duke University Health System, UNC Hospitals, University Health Systems of Eastern Carolina, and Wake Forest University Baptist Medical Center. Additional funding was provided by the following:
Even Superman supports the good.
I don't know about anybody else, but I think I'm going to have to watch that at least 3-4 more times to really ingest the wealth of information that is there. Thank you so much. And I am going to hold off on what I have to say and see if we have some questions from anyone else.
I agree. There was a ton of information in there, and that was amazing to hear all about that history. And I'm a diploma nurse, so I learned a lot as a diploma nurse. So it's just proud to be one, but just that was a lot. That was awesome.
Can I say something, Kim?
Sure.
I have a website. I'll put it in the chat. It's briefly www.nursinghistory.appstate.edu, because I made it when I was at Appalachian State. This movie is on there. You can go to the website and there's a resource bar on the left side, so you can, if you really want to watch it again, you're welcome to. And there's tons and tons and tons of other biographies, a timeline, a lot about Black nurses, a lot of other oral histories. So if you want to continue learning, that's one place. Also, we're hoping to have a part 2 with an update. Kim may tell us. Do you mind me calling you Kim? I'm sorry, Dr. Devada.
No, that's fine.
I'm like Phoebe or Miss Phoebe to everybody.
Kim is fine.
So I'll put that in the chat if that's okay, and for people to be able to watch it again if they really want to.
Absolutely. And I do see some comments in the chat. What a wonderful review of nursing history. Thank you so much. That was awesome. So proud. Yes, yes. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
Yeah, we're hoping for some questions.
This is Allison Bryce. I'd just like to commend you again on this production and putting the history into such a collective way of illustrating it. The Faith Community Nurse Council of NCNA is currently working on trying to gather our history of faith community nursing in North Carolina, because North Carolina was one of the earliest states after Granger Westberg up in Chicago got this concept formulated. And we're working on gathering the nurse pioneers who really brought faith community nursing to North Carolina. So Phoebe, I'd love to connect with you and tell you what we're working on and how we might put some of that together. Because when I was hearing the talk about the Nursing Center for Health Promotion in Charlotte, you know, that's a big piece too of nurses out in the communities and doing a lot of case finding referral, but also really primary prevention. So thank you for all the work you've done on putting this together and the history you're collecting.
That's sweet. One, you know how I really, really, really want other people to write for the Tar Heel nursing history pieces. Chris Copperswaith, who's the person at NCNA who coordinates the Tar Heel nurse, he's so wonderful and easy to work with. But I do believe, see, I would say 5 years ago, but it maybe was as long as 8 years ago, some Faith, what do we use? We used to call them parish nurses. You'll have to forgive me because I'm old. But a parish nurse wrote an article about the history of parish nursing, which was in the Tar Heel Nurse. If you'll put your contact info in the chat, I'll try and find it. And it's possible it's on the website. But I'd love to connect with you.
Phoebe, I wrote that article for Tar Heel Nurse. And
what's that?
That was a few years back before we got the North Faith Community Nurse Council going. And that's what pushed us to this larger gathering of both North and South Carolina pioneers in faith community nursing, trying to create, we thought it was going to be another article, and we think now it might become a pamphlet or a book.
A book, that's great. I can help you get that.
I'll put my contact in the
I'm so sorry I didn't recognize your name. I'm sorry, but it was a great article. See, I refer people to it. I hope y'all have some questions.
Phoebe, my name is Linda. My name is
Uh-huh.
Linda Hoppler. I teach as a clinical professor at ECU now, but worked in hospitals most of my career. My question for you is there a thought that there'll be some attempt to contemporize, so take from where the video leaves off and bring us up to where we are now? There's so many things going on in the state and so many people that are doing good work, and then also things that happened. You know, I think about like the Center for Nursing going away and
Exactly.
capturing the why that happened. And, you know, I just think that is there a thought there's going to be a part 2?
I hope so. We had a pretty active nursing history council before the pandemic, and they were even planning to go to England for Florence Nightingale's maybe 110th birthday. She was born in 1810, right? And so 1910, I'm sorry, I am old. But then the pandemic came, so they didn't get to make that trip. But then people have gone on to different jobs or just got, it has sort of fallen apart at the present time. And I have suggested it to Chris and to Tina, and that maybe in 2027, which would be the 125th anniversary, something needs to be started to be worked on and to commemorate 125. And they're both supportive, but they've got a lot on their plates. So it'd be great if there was, you know, a handful or more of people who would love to update the movie and somehow update it and commemorate at least by 2027. Is that something you'd work with me on?
Let's see, did I unmute? Yeah, I'd be happy to be a part of, trying to capture that.
Can you put your contact information? I mean, are you willing? Oh, I see it. No, I see Allison's. Are you willing to put it in the chat or?
Sure,
If
I'll stick it in there.
Okay. Oh, I think it would be, I would hate to see 125 go by and us not. They actually, it kills me. And at the 50th, which would have been 1952, they apparently worked with WTVD out of Durham and made a show, but it wasn't recorded because it was 1952. But they did something at the convention, and there's reports in the 1952 Tar Heel Nurse, but nothing tangible has been left. And then in the 75th, they made a pamphlet and a calendar, and it's to update. Mary Louise Weish, who the movie talks about a lot, wrote a book that was published in 1938. That's the history of nursing in North Carolina. And so the 75th people were updating Mary Weish's book up to 1977. And then I wrote a book in, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, which is another generalized history of nursing in North Carolina that I think is all digitized on the website. But, and then the 100th, we did this huge centennial thing. So we would be the first to be remiss if we didn't do 125. So
I think, like I said, the website is a really amazing resource. I've used it for my undergraduate baccalaureate students to just said, you can't know where you're going if you don't know where you came from. And so being able to have that resource to point them to is really valuable.
Oh, you're really sweet. I have an ECU degree. It's sort of like name a school in North Carolina. I've probably had a degree there, taught there. But I have an MSN from East Carolina. And Martha Libster was one of my main people. Was she there when you were there?
No.
Oh, she was a nurse. She is a nurse historian and an herbalist.
No. But now a lot of the people that were in the video we watched today, it's like, oh, I recognize that voice, or oh, I've been in a room with that person, or it just brought back many memories of the things that those leaders did to help us be where we are today.
Yeah, Phyllis Horn and Jean, and there's a great crowd out east. So thank you for complimenting the website.
Okay, it looks like we have maybe time for one more question or comment, and then we can close out. Okay. If we don't have any, I will turn it back over to Logan to close us out.
Thank you all for coming to this. I'm really honored. I guess humble. I guess I'm humble.
Thank you.
I love it that they cared about nursing history.
Yes, thank you all for joining. And for those that are eligible for the CE, the continuing education contact hours, you'll receive an email coming directly from me from my email address in the next 48 hours. So just be on the lookout for that. But thank you again, Dr. Paulett and Dr. Delgado, for putting this together. And please stay tuned to our website for part 2 of this presentation. We're working on some dates, and so just stay tuned. We will announce that as soon as we have it finalized. Thank you.